Hello and welcome back to the Avoid the Tyrewall podcast. Today I'm joined by special guest Henry Mercier. Henry, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Hello, I'm Henry Mercier. I'll be racing in British F4 this year with Argenti Motorsports. I'm 16 years old.
How did you get into racing?
It was sort of, it just came about. I don't know. It was something that I don't know when started, but ever since I was a little kid, I had always really enjoyed racing, and cars was something that I had a big passion for. And when I was living in the US, of course, it was a lot harder for me to start that over there. It's just not as popular at all than it is in Europe. And about 4 or 5 years ago, moved to Spain with my family. And it was pretty funny. One of my friend's younger brothers had a birthday party, and he went karting. And since then, I sort of just fell in love with it.
Very nice. So, given that you started karting in 2022, do you feel at a disadvantage compared to your competitors who've been karting for many years?
There obviously is some of that. They've got many more years of experience. Of course, they're going to be more comfortable. They're going to, just be able to think quicker when in the car. But I think at the same time, there's a little bit of an advantage I have because there's many things in karting that you can sort of make a habit of. And a lot of those things are quite hard to break once you make the transition to F4. So I think, yes, there's a disadvantage, but at the same time, I think it's almost a fresh start once moving to F4.
Fair enough. And continuing with the F4 theme, why did you choose British F4 for this season, as opposed to ADAC or Italian?
So I went and with my managers just did a test in the UK with almost no plan to race any F4 this year. It was sort of just to assess where I was in a car, and it was at Silverstone, and afterwards Argenti had asked me to come back and race from the season. So that was kind of the main reason behind choosing British F4, was the reason that I got the opportunity with Argenti. But as well, British F4, I mean, it's got the calendar with all the historic tracks. I mean, a lot of experienced drivers, second-year drivers, so it's a good challenge and a good place to prove yourself.
Yeah, because I know are they at Donington twice this year?
Yeah, we were at Donington twice.
Do you have any particular challenges that you're anticipating ahead of this season?
Of course, being a rookie, one thing I'm looking at is the rookie championship, and this year there's a very, very strong rookie field. Of course, McLaughlin, Behrman, and many others. So that I'm definitely looking forward to. That will be a challenge. But of course, I'm still learning the tracks a little bit, as is a lot of people. And I think that is going to be the biggest challenge, is building the confidence at all these tracks.
You mentioned about obviously learning the tracks. How do you go about learning the track?
Of course, we start is my engineer sort of sending onboards from previous years, so you just sort of watch over, get your just first impressions basically. Then it goes to lots of sim work, whether that's sim work here at my house on my own sim or in the UK with the team. But a lot of sim work goes in beforehand, and then getting to a track, it's mostly about just getting up to speed and building the confidence.
How do you get into the zone before a race?
That's something that's different for every driver for sure. I like to not put too much pressure on myself. I like to be very calm before I get in. I like to be talking with my engineer, with my teammates, very almost not focusing on the driving to get any overthinking out of your head. Of course, there's warm up, skipping rope, resistance bands, tennis balls, all this stuff. But I think you need a balance of some just time where you're not fully focused to just mellow yourself out. and that for me is what works the best.
So obviously this is your first season in cars. Have you altered your training at all? And if so, how have you altered it?
Yeah, you definitely have to alter your training. It's a completely different uh, everything basically. The gym needs to be different. There's a lot more focused parts. Obviously, in karting, you don't need your neck as much as in F4, so that's something that's definitely had to change. The sim work as well. Obviously, karting, it's quite hard to do any sim work without a professional rig and everything. So the sim work is definitely something new. But besides that, it's mostly gym and the sim.
Dom Shaw Racing would like to know what levels of G-force do you experience in an F4 car and how it felt experiencing that for the very first time.
Yeah, the obviously the F4 compared to many other cars, it's got not as much downforce, of course, and not as much speed, but there is definitely quite a lot of G-forces that you experience, and of course, I mean, the British F4 calendar's got a lot of very quick surface circuits, Silverstone, for example, where there's a lot of just strain on your neck. Your body is mostly we're strapped in pretty tight in the car. So your body, you don't really feel that, but on your neck and your arms as well, you feel it a bit. Um, but it's in the first time getting in the car. I mean, it's something you anticipate, but it's almost when you've never experienced it before, you don't know exactly how much to anticipate it. And the F4 was quite the first time in the car. I mean, you don't really expect it, so it almost catches you off guard, I'd say.
Which circuit are you most looking forward to racing on this year?
Hmm. Uh, Probably I'd say Silverstone. You know, it's such a historic track. It's nice open track, good for racing. So I'd say that. And of course, being an F1 circuit, it is special. Whereas some circuits like Ulton, there's almost no overtaking, so that's not as fun.
Yeah, because I know British F4 didn't go to Alton last season. Which is the worst track that you've ever been to in terms of like past performance, or you just didn't like it?
Mm. Last week I took a trip to Wilton Mill for some karting, and that was obviously people love it, but for someone who's been karting only in Europe where tracks are nice and smooth, that was a different experience, and I can't say I liked it. Definitely hurt my ribs a lot and got bruised a bit. So that's definitely one I did not like.
Uh, what's your favourite track that you've not raced on yet?
Hmm. I'd just have to go with Spa. Yeah, every driver's favorite track, I'd say. But I wish we raced there this year. That's somewhere I think I really, really want to race in anything.
It's like one of those iconic tracks, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's got all the history.
So obviously British F4's on the TOCA package with the BTCC. Do you find that this is beneficial in terms of sponsorship opportunity?
I would say yes, you definitely get more exposure as a driver being supported with them, obviously being on television and the crowds that go to watch British touring cars, it's massive, of course. The sponsorship thing, it's it is tough. Obviously more exposure definitely opens it up to more brands wanting to be there. Um I'm not really sure. I don't think it would. I think people and brands would be more focused on the British touring cars rather than as on an F4 driver. So it's a bit different. I mean, F4 doesn't get the amount of exposure, so it's hard to sell, but yeah.
Which track that you visited would you say is the most physically demanding?
I would say definitely Zandvoort. That was one that everyone says it's physically demanding. My trainer, my teammates who have raced there previously, the team, and when you get there, you really feel it. I mean, all the banked corners and the just long corners. That's where you definitely feel the G forces and on your neck and just holding the steering wheel. That is definitely the most physical.
Have you found any particular struggles or challenges when transitioning from karts to cars?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the biggest thing that the karts don't have is downforce. That's something you've got to definitely adapt your driving to, and just being able to trust the downforce that it'll help, and just the car will be stuck to the ground. So I'd say that's for sure the biggest difference that you have to adapt to.
Thank you for watching this week's episode of the Avoid the Tyrewall podcast, and thank you to Henry for doing this interview. See you next week. Bye!